It should show you the YouTube screen. Just click on the mute button beside
All
the.
right. Okay, let me stay with that screen. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth. Good morning to the early morningers. I see a few folks who like to be first in line. And so you have tuned in. So glad to see you. Well, not quite seeing you yet, but so glad to know that you are here. I see some of those who have been with us before, Elaine and June, Reverend Lembe, Reverend Dwight, Dave, I think you were here last time, Oral. I'm not so sure about Sharon, but it's good that you have tuned in. We will start in another minute. Good morning, brothers and sisters, and welcome to the final in our series, UCJCI Learning Opportunities, titled Built to Bend. These opportunities, as you know, are designed to help build our resilience in faith and our responsiveness to the challenges presented by COVID-19, which include the need for physical distancing. I'm Karen Francis, and for this webinar, I am now able to introduce myself not as project manager, but as coordinator for the lay training for the United Church, a post I took on fully on Monday. A warm welcome to everyone. Usually at the start of our webinars, I tell you a little story. I find a way of connecting to the topic. This time, the story is not one that I have found from somewhere else. It's really my own walk, my own journey. I give God thanks for the experiences that I've had in God's church and the opportunities that have been put before me to serve. And out of those opportunities have developed deep passions. I've had a passion for worship for a long time that the Lord has nurtured, and He has taught me a number of things and allowed me to be exposed to a number of things and areas. And that has happened wherever I have been a part of the worshiping community. I've tried to serve. Now, one of the ways in which I have served is as coordinator for worship services at Meadowbrook United Church. And when the decision was made that we needed to have this role, I was one of the coordinators, I wasn't the only one. We felt we needed to go learn how it go. And so we drew on someone who had the experience of it, who came and shared with us. But you know what is key in the whole matter of coordinating or producing worship services? It is how you recognize the main thing, not forgetting what's the main thing and working towards the main thing. So this session today is putting before you something I deeply believe in, how important it is for you to facilitate the worship experience for others as you work behind the scenes. Our resource person today is Marlene Thomas. Marlene currently coordinates programs and projects at Webster Memorial United Church, and I sat at her feet to learn about coordinating or producing services. She is currently a part of the worship support team at Webster with responsibility for production. She has been involved in worship planning for double figure years. We come from far back working together. So I know, says she know what she had talked about. Her professional roles have been located in learning and development, and she is currently the region's NERMIC's vice chair for leadership. Marlene, welcome. We thank God for you, and we look forward to how you will guide us today.
Thank you.
Just before I hand over to Marlene, a few housekeeping matters. For those of you who have been a part of these webinars before, you have a sense of it, but let me share with others. So you are invited to participate using the chat. And the chat is should be at the bottom of your screen, that bubble that looks like a conversation bubble. If you click on that, you should be able to type in your question or your comment. And it is usually addressed either to all panelists, of which Marlene is one, I am one, and one who is also here backing us up is Reverend Craig Dillian Diedrich, who delivered that fabulous webinar last week. He is co-host. So you can send your message in the chat and we will ensure that it is read. And if there's a question, we will answer it. You can also participate by raising your hand. And if you click on participants, you will see your name as an attendee and you will see the feature that allows you to raise hand. And we will keep our eyes on it so that the presenter knows when someone wants to speak. Your mics are muted. And when you are given permission to speak, you will be then told that you're allowed to unmute your mic. You will be able to unmute your mic. Folks, we take a health break halfway through the webinar. Firmly convinced it is not healthy for us to just sit down for 2 hours. It's not good. So we will take a 5-minute break at 11. I urge you not to keep sitting, but to move around a bit, go get some water, go get some coffee, come back and we start again 5 minutes after. So that's it. Marlene, over to you.
Thank you so much, Karen. Good morning, brothers and sisters. And it is really good. I'm so happy and thankful that you have come out on this wet and chilly Saturday morning, so early on a Saturday morning. So do appreciate your being here. I am going to share my screen now. And there we go. And this morning, I really feel like I'm practicing what I'm preaching, in that I am facilitating the sharing of knowledge with a community of persons whom I'm not seeing and I'm not hearing on a regular basis. So it's kind of like, doing it as you talk about it. And so this morning, we're going to be looking at producing worship services for live streaming. There are some questions I want you to ask yourselves, not necessarily to answer here now because we don't have the time, but to decide for yourself whether or not your context really needs to live stream or if you need to stream. I was very instructed by Reverend Craig's presentation last week, and I just invite you to think about it as we go through. Is it streaming or live streaming for you? What are the benefits and the disadvantages of each? So I would love you to remember and act on.
May I just, there are some folks here who may not have been in the webinar last time. Could you just quickly say the difference between streaming and live streaming?
Thank you. Valid point. When you're live streaming, you are broadcasting within seconds of the event happening. So you're pretty much live online. When you're streaming, you have recorded an activity, you've had an opportunity to edit it, and then you post it. All right. So I just want to leave that with you for you to think through what is more appropriate for your context. Thanks much, Karen. Now, before we get into the meat of the matter, I want to highlight something, right? I would love you to remember and implement most of the things we agree here today. But there's one I really want to focus you on, and that is the details. If you don't leave with anything else, and I'm hoping that that's not the case, I want you to remember the importance of details to the planning process. When you're talking about planning a worship service, details become very, very important. When you're talking about live streaming a worship service, the details become paramount. And this is even more critical when half of the worshiping community or a part of the worshiping community is with you in the sanctuary and the other half or the other part is viewing online from dispersed locations. So when you have to split it, it is quite a challenging task. For usher persons who are in front of you, you can see, you can connect with physically. At the same time, ushering persons who are not even disembodied voices, just nothing at all. And you still have the task of ushering them into worship. You're planning to usher them in and you're actually leading them in to worship. It gets very interesting, but there is nothing at all that fear God can do. So as we proceed with the planning and producing functions of the worship service, we have to steep everything. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I need to say it. It is all about remaining connected with our source ourselves, about listening to him, and about really making sure that we are operating within his will. Fact of the matter is, friends, that this can easily become a slick production activity. We can get it right. We can have it, it will be like one of those fancy productions, international productions. And not necessarily saying anything is bad with that, but we could lose the essence of worship if we focus too much on that. At the same time, we have to make sure that it's not a slapdash activity. Something we just kind of draw together Saturday evening and go do, and mumble a little prayer and run go do Sunday morning. So we have to find that nice balance. And remembering the details is one of the ways that will help us. Focusing on the details, document the details. Because what is crystal clear in your mind is not interpreted in the same way by all the members of your team. So document the details. Other thing I want us to focus on before we get into the meat of the matter is mistakes. We're all on a very steep learning curve. Mistakes will happen. Don't agonize too much over them. Move on, learn from them. Celebrate the wins. Be gentle with yourselves and be gentle with your team members. Not many of us study this kind of thing in school. We kind of just wake up one morning doing it this way, we try a little thing, and then all of a sudden COVID say, okay, this is how you have to proceed. So we are all learning as we go. And don't allow the mistakes to destroy the team effort that is so important to this process. So I have a quick question for you, and I want you to just answer me. Karen will put up the poll feature, and we'll see how many of us are now streaming or live streaming our worship services. If you could just respond to that very quickly.
Okay, not the poll feature. Just put it in chat, please. Your answer to that.
Yes and
how
no.
Many? Yes, okay. Yes and no. How many are? If you are, we will see the responses. Okay,
And the responses
so
are,
we're
Mhm.
seeing Ridgemount is streaming, so is Low River, Dwight, so that's Greendale, 3 so far. Mark, not sure what your congregation is, but that's a no. Duke Street is streaming. Sav. And there's another who's, oh, okay. Reverend Craig, somebody is having a challenge. If you could respond to that, to Trifina. Meadowbrook is streaming. So far we're gone 5, Marlene.
Okay, that's a 5 of harmony.
Andrews 6 and 2
About 20%.
no's so far. Mhm.
Mhm. All right. So quite a few of us are already in the business of live streaming. And what I would ask is that please feel free to participate. Share your experiences, share your thoughts, share your ideas, put them in the chat. Let us all learn from each other as we proceed. Let us look now at the end of the session. What are some of the learning outcomes that we're expecting? We're expecting that at the end of this session, you should be able to develop a production plan, including a timed schedule, a schedule of all the elements of the worship service, the tasks that are needed to facilitate the implementation of each element, the persons who will undertake these tasks, and the resources that will be required. So that really is just at the end of it, everybody should be able to create a worship plan, a production plan based on your own context. The other thing that we want to happen at the end of this is that we should be able to deliberately guide worship planners and leaders into engaging worshipers in the sanctuary and online. What are some of the tips and strategies that we can share to help our worship planners and leaders deliberately engage and recognize that we have worshipers here and we have worshipers online? So I have another question for you. For those of us who are now live streaming, what are some of the challenges you're facing? What are the biggest challenges that you're coming across as you seek to live stream? I'll give you a minute to put that in the chat.
Poor audio quality is one response coming across. Connectivity is another. Person who said connectivity, your church uses the cell phone, I believe, to do the streaming. Audio is a problem. Unstable internet connection is another. Oh, dealing with masks. Please say a little more, Elaine. I am surmising that that has to do with sound as well as discomfort. So a variety of responses there, Marlene, that have to do with internet connectivity,
It has to do.
audio.
So the
Lack of,
responses are taking up primarily a technical nature.
well,
Can I encourage you
there's
to?
one that just came up, lack of equipment.
All right.
Yes, go ahead.
Can we, friends, I want to encourage us, think about, I know the technical issues are great, the equipment issues are great, but are there any non-technical issues that you're facing now as you seek the live stream? What are they?
Okay, well, one coming up, Marlene, is, and this is an expansion on what Elaine had said, worship leaders not wearing masks due to the discomfort of it. Starting on time. Human resource is one that has been highlighted by Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie, feel free to put in a little bit more on that. Finance is another. Oh, she did expand persons who are willing to take on the roles. So that's the human resource problem.
Right.
Speakers and worship participants not aware of how to, okay, there's a word there, not so sure. Oh, how to deal with being filmed. That's an important one.
Yes, that's a critical one.
Those are the ones I've seen so far.
Okay, all right. I have listed them down and we will be revisiting them during the course of the presentation.
Okay.
Now, let us talk about the producer or coordinator. What are the key roles of the producer or the coordinator? And I posit that one of the key functions of this role is to harmonize all aspects of worship services to facilitate connection between God and God's people. At the end of the day, that is what we are about. No matter how slick we get, no matter how we perfect all the other things, if we are not ushering people into worship, we would have failed. So everything that we do, we want to keep that at the back of our minds. The second role is to ensure that when we gather to worship, we consistently offer our best to God. A number of us in our professional sphere will know that you don't just turn up at a meeting and expect it to run well. There's a significant amount of work that has to be put in the back end. But sometimes when we get so overwhelmed, we sort of remember on Thursday night that, wow, worship coming up, and Friday we pull something together, and we want to discourage that. We want to create the teams. And I hear the person who said that human resource is an issue. It's a very, very real issue. Because when you are live streaming, it is best to have more than one full team. And we're going to talk about the components of the team later on. Because if the same persons are on every week, in a little while, there's going to be significant burnout, and some of them will just walk away from the function, or maybe even walk away from the congregation because they're tired out. Right? So we need to find, and so that question that I asked earlier becomes important. Do we have the depth of human resources required to live stream week after week on a Sunday, and possibly also live stream our Bible studies, right? Or do we want to take an easier route, record some of them, and we can talk about how we can record them and still facilitate connection and play them back on whatever platform that we are using. So when we don't show up and do our work, this is what happened. Confusion on Sunday morning, because nobody is clear about who was going to do what, and things just fall between the cracks, and the liturgist is up there not sure what to do next, and the cameraman don't know where to look, and it degenerates. So the producers have to make sure that we have a full handle on all the elements of the service. As a matter of fact, what I would suggest is, after you've gone through the planning process, on the Saturday afternoon, sit and just visualize the service. Take it through step by step for yourself. You may want to do it alone. You may want to do it with a partner, with a team member, and just make sure that every single thing is in place for every single element. And that's when you finalize the running order. We'll share the running order later on. But this thing about visualizing it, and if you can actually do it in the sanctuary, is even more helpful. So we're going to talk now about how do we encourage worship planners and worship leaders to facilitate dual worshiping communities, right? In a time of COVID, how do we get them to be so sensitive and so consistently aware that we are no longer just standing up in front of people who we can see and hear their amens and read their faces and see when they're falling asleep? I want us to start with the basics. First, let's just ask the question, what will they see? It's a very, very basic question. What will they see? There is something called used to blindness. Because I'm used to something, I don't even see it anymore. And that has caught us off guard here at Webster. We are so accustomed to our sanctuary and all the things in our sanctuary that we never notice the organist always have whole heap of little rat-a-tat-a book on top of the organ. We never notice the person who played the drum have one little ugly white chair right side of him, and that's where he put on him, or her in this case, and that's where she put on our things. We didn't notice that certain things in our sanctuary are beginning to fray because we had just grown accustomed to them over time. So we need to look at what we are projecting, and we need to look at them through very, very fresh eyes. We also need to look at them through the eyes of the camera, because what we see when we look with our own eyes is very, very different from what we see depending on the angle of the camera. Things will seem larger, things will seem more prominent than they are in reality. They will also seem to be more cluttered and more clustered than they are in reality. So I would encourage all of us, just go in with one of the camera persons and make sure they pick up all the shots in the sanctuary even before you begin. You will see dust in some places that you never imagined. All right. Let me give you an example of this. Before I do that, let me talk about decor. So decor don't have to be fancy and expensive, but I'd encourage us to keep it as simple as we can, as clear as we can, because whatever you see in the sanctuary, once it is picked up by the camera, it looks a lot more cluttered and clustered. So thin out whatever it is that you have on your platform as much as you can, thin it out. And try to stick with clean, simple lines. Be very, very careful about the colors that you use for your backdrop. For example, we have white background sometimes depending on the liturgical season. And then guess what? When you have white background and you put lights on that, enough camera flare come up. And the people who are watching it makes them very, very uncomfortable. So things like these we pick up. Experiment, talk to the experts where you can find them if they're not within your context. We had to have people calling us to say, what is happening? I'm getting all of this thing on the screen. And then we realized it was because we had used a shiny white background and the lights were focusing directly on it. So look at that shot. That was one of our Bible studies. And Michelle did a wonderful job with the Bible study. But every time we use that shot, that very prominent white chair with the dirty bottom and the cardboard underneath it became a feature. So immediately we were getting calls. Can somebody please move that chair? Of course, this was recorded and we couldn't do nothing about it at the time, right? So, but that is the chair I'm speaking about. We had just grown so accustomed to that chair that we never saw it. But then guess what? We had fixed the angles before. When the camera person started rolling the camera, he realized that he would get a lovely shot of the plant and Michelle if he just shifted the camera a bit. Did not realize that it would also be shifted into that very distressing looking white chair. So, fresh eyes, examine every frame. Even when so we set it up before, try and stay in the room with the camera person. So if you see something like this, you can correct it immediately. It may seem strange that the camera person didn't see it, but believe you me, I can easily understand how it happens when you're doing multiple things and that is not your focus. But once it's finished and you notice how prominent the chair is, it just looks bigger than everything else. Create a focal point if you can. This focal point lends some benefits to the process. One, if things are not happening as smoothly as we would like on the platform, it allows the camera person just to move away from that and focus on something else. We try to change our focal areas regularly, and this one was for a week when we were looking at a theme that said, God wants me and my money. So depending on what's happening in the service, what song is being sung, what the preacher is saying, the camera person has the option of just focusing on this for a while. You can have other things that they can focus on, and it's good to select them before the fact so that persons know exactly. As a matter of fact, if you have a switcher, you can select various shots and you can have a shot there that is your resting shot. And whenever things go a little haywire, you just go immediately to your resting shot. So It could be a piece of art that is important to your congregation. Some of you are familiar with Webster will recognize this as a burning bush that was donated to us decades ago. Or you could use stained glass, depending on what's happening in your congregation. This is from St. Andrew Parish Church. Okay? So you could use a picture of the cross, and the cross could be a physical cross in your sanctuary, or it could be a cross that is hanging from the lectern fall. But beforehand, agree in the event of not wanting to project certain things on camera. These are your options. You have it framed and you can go to it very easily.
May I just ask Marlene, could one also use a backdrop that you have created, like a PowerPoint slide that you could go to in those moments as well?
It is possible, but with our particular setup, it's going to take a little bit more organizing because the person who is switching is different from the person who is doing the visuals. So it all depends on what's happening with that person at that time. But it certainly sounds feasible. We have asked it and we have been told for our setup, there is going to be a delay if we try to do that. It's quicker to just have the camera move, they tell us.
I'm aware that that's what Portmore United Church seems to do. So when there are people, significant numbers of people moving off of the platform and others coming on, and you'd have a sort of dead space there. But they do their streaming on Facebook.
And so they're able to switch easily. Yes, it is a very, very viable option. Now, so those were some little background things to get us started. Let us talk now about crafting the service. It is absolutely critical, friends, that the producers have a seat at the planning table. Resist the temptation of having the minister or somebody else or another group plan a service and then hand it to another team to produce it. This will create problems, especially for the online community. A 45-second pause in the sanctuary don't feel like anything, you know. But a 45-second pause online when nothing is happening can feel like an eternity. And the broadcast experts will tell us, if that happens, people may simply just walk away or click away. You know, they're not, you're already in the sanctuary, so you'll probably stay there. But online, you run the risk if you have these long pauses with nothing happening. So even when you're going to that focal point, don't stay there, you know, give them one, give them another, make some music come in, keep the thing moving. The producer's presence at the table will help ensure that both the online community and the community, that we're taking them into consideration. And it will minimize the logistic nightmares that can happen when only creative people are at the table. And I'm not minimizing the creative people because we need both. But the persons who are highly creative, we have noticed, tend not to tie down the details. And so you need to have both of them working together. For example, you may have a group of planners, and these are the creatives now, and they have a wonderful vision of a dance with dancers coming forward to worship at the altar, and you know, and they're telling you about what sort of expressions they must have and what their hands must be doing. But as the producer, you know that there is no camera in your sanctuary that can pick that up. The cameras are just not positioned that way. So now your logical and logistic mind will have to come to the table and say, that's a wonderful idea. But for us, that not going to work until and unless we put these other things in place. So the creatives and the logical minded persons, both are critical to the process, and it runs a lot more smoothly when both are at the table at the same time. Ordering the elements. So we know about the flow of worship, we know about all the elements that you must have in it, and we know about, you know, how these elements must move from one to the other. And COVID has visited something else upon us, and that is now or microphones. I can give you, if you are in a context that has a limited number of microphones, say for example, you may have 4 microphones, right? And your praise team of 4 goes up and they observe the physical distance and they deliver with passion and intensity. And then right after that, you have some young people who are supposed to go up and present a drama piece based on the song. That's a wonderful thing for worship planning, but for logistics, it can't work because you have to have time to get those mics from the praise team people, sanitize the mics, and hand them to the young people to go and continue with that piece of drama. Now, if that is not well thought out, you can immediately see where there's going to be a bungling and the camera will have to find somewhere to go. Much better for the producer to be at the table and say, hold on, we only have 4 mics. You have to build something in between those two pieces. Another thing we have, in addition to the sanitizing of the mics, we have to be particularly sensitive of the distance requirements. And guess what? Even when you are observing the 6 feet in life, when you have it on camera, it don't look like you have 6 feet between the people. So you have to watch how many persons are on your platform at a single moment. When you add your minister, if you have a guest preacher, you have your musicians, you have the praise team, and then you have somebody coming up to read a scripture or share some piece of information. That you have to make sure that doesn't happen. You have to have people coming off. And one of the quick ways of doing this is, wherever possible, have the praise team lead the songs, but not all of them don't necessarily go up on the platform to do it. Some of them can stay off, but our praise team have told us that visibility is critical. So even when they stay off, we have to so position them that they can see each other and hear each other well. So just take that little detail into account. So we spoke about the logistics. Now, let us look at how we begin to build inclusivity. We spoke about movement. I have been speaking and I have not been advancing my slides. So this is where we are now. Talking about including persons, and the call to worship and the welcome gives us some wonderful opportunities. The call to worship, I would recommend that depending on the experience of the worship leader, that the planning team actually craft the call to worship. And in crafting the call to worship, there are some elements. You're welcoming those in the sanctuary. You're welcoming those online. You're welcoming those on Facebook. You're welcoming those on YouTube. You're welcoming those who are on their veranda. You're welcoming those who just rolling out of bed. But you try to build everybody into the process. You should know, if you have members who are coming in, you're welcoming those online who are in Japan, or those who are in Toronto, wherever. And we talk about how you pick up that information and how we share it. So try to welcome persons from as many areas as you possibly can. And also during this time, celebrate what's happening in people's lives. So somebody just have a new baby, big up that, talk about it, personalize it. What we're trying to do now is to continue the sense of community, the sense of belonging. We are family, even though we spread out so much right now because of COVID. Be careful though about how much personal information is shared online. So somebody who is having a new baby, you don't want to give out all bill and receipts so they can be easily recognized. But you can certainly say, Stephen and Joan welcomed a brand new baby this year. You don't have to go into any more detail than that. Preferably don't use their last name. As a matter of fact, to pick up on that point about persons not being on camera, there is a whole host of concerns with privacy and what happens when we put persons' information out on the internet. So some of our members have actually asked us not to celebrate their birthdays online, not to celebrate their wedding anniversaries online. And so we have gotten to the point now where we acknowledge that. So we just do a group, but certainly you can welcome, especially when people have generic names, you can welcome somebody home, or you can say somebody is getting better and somebody has come out of the hospital, that kind of thing. I've switched into the welcome. The call to worship, especially for persons who are at home, make the point that worship is active. We have to help people move away from the idea that they are watching service online to the idea that they are worshiping. And every time we get an opportunity, we need to speak to the persons who are worshiping online and encourage them to do something. It may be as simple as during the greeting time, you say, hug your loved one who is there beside you. Send a greeting in the chat. Do something. Stand and worship with us. Right? Do something. Give them something to do that will allow them to move from being passive consumers, people who go to a concert, and switch them over to being active worshipers. Now, the live chat feature. This is potentially a very powerful feature. We can use it a lot. So the first thing is that you have to have somebody or a group of persons moderating your chat. Please don't just allow the chat function and move away from it. A senior member of the congregation who understands our beliefs, our theology, and who can take control over the situation needs to be there in the live chat, responding to comments, not allowing certain kinds of comments. We've had a few strange experiences, and so now we consistently have that person there. But guess what that person can do? That person can also engage the community online. That person can begin to, persons will come on and just say, good morning, but that person can actually say, how are you doing? Long time don't see the. Start a conversation. Of course, you have to do it in such a way that this conversation does not become a distraction. But you certainly can engage the persons in the live chat, and then this person can send a message to the worship leader. And the worship leader can either comment on it or respond to it, but certainly include it so that you begin to build that inclusivity, right? Recently, we had a congregational meeting, and a member who is now living in Japan, and she's been on WhatsApp and so with a couple of persons, but the fact that she was able to join this congregational meeting and the minister was able to see her and say, oh, so we have Kamika with us this evening, and and how is the, and start talking about her family. That gives, and then we had somebody who is coming in from Suriname, and she has a problem with connection. But this time when she make it on, the moderator was able to say, Joan is with us, let us da. So look out for opportunities like that. Share the information, have the worship leader actually welcome the person specifically, and of course, you're not going to stick on the same people all the while. You're going to vary this. It's not only the upfront and active people that you're going to acknowledge. As a matter of fact, I would suggest that we spend time acknowledging the less active and the newer members, because persons who join the congregation, who join the church now, it's going to be more difficult to integrate them into the life of the church. So we have to take a particular focus on them and see now, how do we ensure that this fruit, this flower will come to full bloom. In the same way that we say to people in the congregation, shout hallelujah, we can say to people in the live chat, write hallelujah. We can ask people in the live chat to respond to certain comments, right? We can ask people in the live chat to give a shout out to somebody else. And the shout out is an important feature. You hear people on the radio, the broadcasters using it all the while. We can use it in church. As a matter of fact, we now have our children, because the children are particularly vulnerable. Children not connecting with us in the way that they used to connect with us. And we're not sure that they're being nurtured in the way that they need to be nurtured. So we have to find creative ways of connecting them. And one such way is to have children deliver shout out to children. Have a look at what one of our young children did recently.
Hi everybody, and you are not able to worship in the sanctuary with COVID-19. Kind of in a timeout right now, but we've been doing our online services. Haven't they been great? At least we still get to say hi to you guys though. Hi Zachary. Hey Aiden. Hello Moya. Hi Althea. Hey Amber. Hello Talicia. Hi Matthew. Hi Ashley. Hi Danielle. Hello Anya. Hi Rashad. Hey Kayla. Hi Khalid.
All right. So that's a very, very simple thing. It took 30 seconds. She was excited to do it. She was calling to all her friends. And you notice the difference when you're talking to Max as opposed to talking to somebody else. And the thing is that we get a list of all the church school members and we scroll through it. And we put it up at different times. And believe you me, they are very excited about hearing their names. We underestimate the power of these things. I remember when Romper Room used to come on. Remember when Auntie Sheila used to see the children through the looking glass? Yeah, it's the same kind of thing. And it grabs children in a way that adults might say, what is that? But I encourage you, it works. Now, how can we use the prayers and the scriptures to build connection? We can do a couple of things. We can have members, especially shut-ins or older members, create audios or videos of their prayer and just play them in the sanctuary. So instead of somebody going up and delivering the prayer of adoration, we ask Sister Mary, and those prayers, they put a lot into it. And if Sister Mary can't do the video feature, you can have somebody help her out with the audio feature, and then she will send it in. It also creates helps us in another way. Reduce the pressure on the microphone, reduce the pressure on the amount of people in the sanctuary, reduce the pressure on the movement on the platform, right? So we're getting a number of wins just from having somebody at home. We're engaging them and we are making the service more seamless. The same is true for the scripture reading. From time to time, have different people read the scripture. Send us the audio, send us the video. If all they can manage is the audio, we still take it, and then we just either project a picture of them or an appropriate image and have their voices behind it. And acknowledge the fact that this morning, Sister Mary is coming to us, and she will pray for And Sister Mary has a way of her prayers, not the generic prayers. Sister Mary will get into prayers. Sister Mary will pray for the congregation. Sister Mary will pray up the things then that need to be prayed up. So engage persons like that. And Sister Mary Miss Church can done because she can't tell when last she leave our house.
May I suggest something, Marlene? We could also help people to understand worship in our life everywhere. If you have, for example, your congregation is located in a rural setting, in a farming community, you could have one of your members doing the prayer or reading the scripture from the location of the farm. If somebody can do that video, all of these things, it depends on your capacity, but it's an idea that if they're on the farm, make we see the background of them on the farm, or if it's a father who is in the kitchen, that it is there. But the idea is that there is energy, there is life, there is worship in all of life that is being brought together in this worship time on this Sunday morning.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm going to show you one that mirrors what you're talking about in a little while. When you're asking persons to do this, so do give them a little bit of guidance in terms of how they position their heads, because we've had persons who go into a full prayer attitude and the head go all the way down and all we get is the head up. So we have to say, can you just do that again for us? And just give them a little bit about, distance, how to hold the camera, landscape or portrait, depending on what your setup is like. And you can also use these persons to share testimonies. And some of these testimonies are very, very powerful because they are well thought out and they have time to do retake and so on, and they can bring the community together. As a matter of fact, one point that I would want I remember that we're still in an intergenerational frame. So we have in the sanctuary, we have the online people, we have the 90-year-olds, and we have the 10-year-olds. So it's a big task. So the worship planners have to make sure that there is something in every service that will connect with this very diverse population. So they have to do it with a strong sense of awareness. I am planning a service for my granny, for my mother, for my cohorts, for my daughter, for my daughter's children. And we're also planning it for a variety of socioeconomic groupings, right? The notice is, the broadcasters have told us that if we go too far beyond an hour, we're going to lose our online community. And they're telling us that this is based on research and based on the feedback we've had from some persons, we believe them. So we absolutely try not to get beyond an hour and 15 minutes or so. And so, the time when you used to go up and talk about all the fish fry and the bun sale and the fundraising, and we have to find creative ways of sharing this kind of information now. Even as we encourage persons to share their own emotions and experience and acknowledge where we are. Sometimes just by acknowledging where we are, just like that young girl, it's a time of COVID. This is what is happening. That will help persons who are struggling at home. So let us look at another example of how we can engage online worshippers that will speak to Karen's point just now.
What a piece of something. And I still help him. Even though we're facing with the coronavirus, and we can't go to church as we used to at one time. But guess what? We can still watch one another. We can still have fellowship, We can have it by Zoom. We can have it on YouTube. We can watch church on YouTube. And we can all watch it by live stream. Yes, man. Why not, man? We have to still one another. And still fellowship and worship, man. We have all harvest come up. This one harvest started with next week Sunday. Next week Sunday. Yes, man. You can still bring in the things, man. Bring in your growth provision and bring in the liquor, everything that you used to bring in this year. We still have harvest. This harvest is going to go on until I think it's next year, May. Yeah, man. We'll have this starting of the 18th and 18th. And so it's still going on. We have this virus. We can still manage. God will help He said, will never leave us, will never forsake us. So if you go through the water, or go through the fire, they're still the way. So God said, have fellowship, come together, same man, watch it every Sunday morning. I would have 20 people come to church this morning. Well, it's not 20 people because you want a party. Yeah, man, a party. Not you. Look for me there. Would I tell why? Yeah, they are in a spring. Yes. She want to do man. Everybody look at me. Look at how people say, enjoy yourself. Because this thing that will last forever. As a matter of fact, we have better things awaiting us. Where's some moving? By and by, when the morning comes, all the saints are heard. I got that time, you see. When all of this medical work, when Jesus comes back and take that blessed place, God prepare for me. So enjoy the service and take care of yourself. Be safe. Remember, before you wear mask, say, we have a mask here. Make sure your man, you wash your hand, them, you sanitize, you keep the social distance, and you do all the protocol that the government you feel here to be done. Now yourself, you're going to enjoy the service. All right.
Okay, so yes, Mass Gussie is a character, and you may not have a Mass Gussie like that, but there are certain persons, as Karen was talking about, somebody in the farming community, they can do a quick video. Of course, you notice that we never give Mass Gussie enough briefing the camera position, so it starts up in his head and it come down and it go back up. But those are some of the things I say, when the mistakes are made, just don't make them too big an issue. Just make sure that the next time now that we learn from it and we move on from there. I want to pause for a little bit now to get some questions or comments. I am not picking up the chat feature, Karen.
Okay. I will monitor the chat feature for you. We have a comment already coming in from one of our participants, pointing out that the presentation is rich with ideas, but the challenge for their setting is the lack of human resources, and the reality of COVID-19 makes it even worse. I don't know if you want to make a comment on that.
Yes, I do. And that's why I raise the whole possibility of not live streaming, but just streaming. Because the pressure on the human resource is great. And when we go to the production team and the production process, and you will see just how many persons you will need to engage on a regular basis. And a number of congregations will not be able to sustain that over the long period. And it is looking as if COVID is going to be here. So in that case, we can look at recording an event, then streaming it, but having persons in the chat in the moment. So you could have a live chat, even though it's a pre-recorded event. And the moderators and so on can be there engaging with the persons at the same time. That's one possibility. Another possibility is to record it and encourage persons to call in or text in their questions and comments. So, for example, our Bible study takes place on a Wednesday. We pre-record it 1 week in advance. And then when the questions for this Wednesday comes in, they are given to the minister. He creates the answers for them. And at the beginning of the next week, he will respond to those. Or if there are too many questions, there may be just one session where you group the questions and you just deal with them. It means, therefore, that the production team would not have to be here twice per week on a consistent basis. And when you are recording, you need a much smaller team. As a matter of fact, 3 persons can come in and set up that. 3, sometimes 2 persons can come in and get that session recorded. We have never tried it with recording the service and then broadcasting it afterwards, but we have consistently done it with the Bible study. And it works. I would encourage you to try that method, especially if you can get your technical team, or you can seek technical support from the NERM technical team and the Reverend Craig to see how you would then create a live chat feed in the service. That, of course, will create a problem for you in that you have people in the sanctuary and you have people online, right? So the persons in the sanctuary will, of course, be experiencing it live, which will be a very, very different experience from the ones who are in the sanctuary. But you have the opportunity after the service to sit and carefully edit the service. Take out all those little fluff things, take out all the little errors, take out, whatever you need to do, just cut them out, and then you go live.
We have a comment from June, and June, I would like to invite you to speak. June was saying the ideas are good, but it all depends on the platform one uses, the equipment, available personnel. June, I wonder if you would like to say a little bit more. You could go ahead and unmute your mic. Oh, she doesn't have any microphone feature, so that's all right. Okay, so we're picking that up. Sharon is saying that
before you go on, Karen, let me just say something to June. June, I understand and I completely appreciate what you're saying. So the thing is, just do the best with what you have. If your platform is pretty much fixed, then so something as simple as for the I don't know if you could get some of your musical instruments off the platform to create more space for you, or if you could change the lectern, make the lectern, so use a plexiglass rather than a wooden lectern. And I don't know how that would work in your thing, but what I'm saying to you is that just work with what you have and do the best. We realize that not everybody will be able to do everything, and that's where the whole comment about mistakes come in. Look at it and constantly look at it and see now, what else can I do to bring this to the place where I want it to be. There are a lot of videos on YouTube. A lot of persons are sharing ideas about live streaming and streaming. What I can do is make a couple of those, the ones that I found most useful. I will put them at the end of the presentation, and then you can go on and have a look at them.
Okay. Now, June is clarifying that by platform, she meant whether Facebook or YouTube, not the physical platform. Dave is noting that
So what's the question?
Huh.
Sorry, Karen. So what's the question about the platform? Because I got that completely wrong.
Okay, she was saying that the ideas are good, but it depends on the platform one uses. Platform is one issue, equipment and available personnel. So the implementation of some of what you're suggesting is limited by the particular means you choose for live streaming, as well as the availability of people and equipment.
And equipment, completely agreed. Yes,
if I may just respond to one participant who is saying that this webinar feature does not have a mic. It does. If you raise your hand choosing to speak, then we will enable your being able to speak, and then you can unmute. Just want to clarify that for folks. Okay. All right. So there's another question. Could you please mention some other ways to make the delivery of the notices more engaging? Wow. Or shorter, as the plain reading of notices comes across as very tedious online. I know Marlene will respond. She sort of responded to that already. I'll leave it to her to just go back to that. But another one is, the other response to the microphone. So could you respond, please, to that participant who is asking for some ideas for engaging notices online?
We all struggle with that, don't we? And some of the things we can do, one, you don't have to go up there and do all those notices every single week. Some of them can be emailed out. Some of them can be WhatsApp out. Some of them you just need little reminders, right? For the big ones, I suggest you encourage persons to create 60-second videos. You'll be amazed at what can be achieved in 60 seconds. Just create a 60-second video. And we did one recently for our Bible quiz, and it just basically said, coming soon, Bible quiz 2020. This is the topic. These are the books. Contact this person for registration information. And it was over. It had nice graphics. It had music. And our young people are particularly skilled, although some of our older persons are getting into it now. It's amazing what they can do with their phones, and it's another way of engaging them. So once you identify the youngsters who have this skill, you can begin to invite them to create these 60-second videos, and you play them, and you limit the need to go up there and talk about it, and you complement that with your other communication channels, your WhatsApp, your YouTube, not your YouTube, your WhatsApp and your email, and get the information out that way. Also, be very, very careful about how often you remind people about things. So you have an event coming up in June. You launch it in, let's just say, April. There is no need to mention it every single Sunday between April and June. So create a schedule and say, okay, these are the activities. We will do this one then, that one then. And every Sunday, we will try to do only one. But if we must, we will do two.
It's time for our break, but our sister Elaine wants to say something. We will take that comment quickly. Elaine, could you unmute and go ahead and speak?
I was just wondering if in some cases you couldn't do the notices after the live broadcast. Say when you do the benediction, if it's something that you just want to say to your persons in the sanctuary, in the church, you could say it after that. And
sorry.
Right. Well, I just wanted to commend you on a very good presentation. It's very, very interesting. Lots of stuff to consider and act on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank
That's
you
an
for that.
excellent suggestion, Elaine, and it will work if the bulk of your congregation is in the sanctuary. But if the restrictions have put you in a position where the bulk of your congregation is outside of the sanctuary, it may not be as effective.
Okay,
But
folks,
yes,
we're
certainly can do.
going to take a break. I've seen your comment, Sharon, and we'll respond to that when we resume. Just wanting to let you all know that we are streaming live on YouTube right now as well. So if you know of persons who have not received the link and who may be interested, you can quickly tell them to go to the UCJCI channel. On YouTube, we're streaming live, and we had a comment there when we were asking which churches were streaming, and the Reverend Kareen responded that Andrews is streaming as well.
Wonderful.
So we will take a 5-minute break now, folks. Go get up, stretch, move, have a glass of water. You can don't log out, don't log out, stay there, just come back in 5 minutes.
Baba yetu yetu liye mbinguni yetu yetu amina. Baba yetu yetu liye jina lako we litukuzwe. Baba yetu yetu liye mbinguni yetu yetu amina. Baba yetu yetu liye jina lako we litukuzwe. Utupe leo chakula chetu, tunachohitaji utusamehe makosa yetu. Tunahowasamehe wale yotukasea, yusutuyo katika majaribu, lakini utuokoe na yule mwovu milele. Chetu tunachohitaji utusamehe makosa yetu, kumana tunahowasamehe wale yotukasea, yusututi katika majaribu, lakini utuokoe na yule mwovu milele.
Okay, folks, we are back online. Hope you have had a good stretch. So we've been sharing some very important points. Thanks to Marlene for sharing some very important pointers for us for how we plan to engage an online audience and how we produce. Just before we closed, before we took the break, there was a question asking whether the United Church has a department that trains if a congregation needs training or needs help. Well, yes, we do now. Actually, from last year, the training of lay leaders was relaunched in a new and fresh way through the United Church Lay Training Institute. And we're ramping up activities with that. Of course, COVID placed some challenges there, but coming back stronger and better. And I know that within that program, the first module includes worship, and it looks at worship planning and training for liturgists. Now, it was said before, and just in case you don't know, whenever the sessions are available, although the primary target audiences are the elders for whom this training is mandatory, lay pastors for whom the training is mandatory, and the leaders of ministry groups and members who have a general interest are welcome. So the regions are meant to let you know when these sessions are on. So if you have an interest, you may indicate it and you can participate. So obviously with COVID-19, some adjustments are being made to the content. And this is one piece that needs to be put in there. So the facility is there, and I'm inviting you, Sharon, please use that email address to contact me for further information. All right. There's a question whether this presentation will be recorded and available after. The information will be available to you most certainly. And as we have said, it is on YouTube, which means that you can go back to it. All right. Fine. And the clarification is that the need for training was made in respect of live streaming and all the technology. Not sure if you were there last week, Sharon, but we said that the technology teams in each region have been tasked to work with congregations. So for those who have an interest of getting on board, they would work through the technology team, and Reverend Craig might be able to say something about the team for NERMIC before we're finished. I'm not sure right now who are the team leaders in the other regions, but certainly that information can be accessed through your regional office. Elaine, did you have another question or comment? Or did we address? I think we may have addressed it, Reverend Craig. Okay, Marlene, please take us back in.
Thank you, Karen. Welcome back, guys. I want to start off by talking a little bit about that question about persons who don't want to be on camera. A very, very real and relevant issue. Because we are finding that not only do some of the persons who would normally lead worship not wanting to go up there, but when the camera pangs the sanctuary, some persons are saying, please don't pick up my face and put it on no internet. I come to worship, I don't want it all over the place. And again, it's coming out of that question of privacy. Now, in terms of the members in the sanctuary who don't want to be projected, the recommendation is that you can dull the images when you pan, so you're not picking up individual faces, and only do it when you absolutely must. For example, when our when our boys brigade having a color party and they're coming in and you are picking them up coming in, you must of necessity pick up persons who are on either side of them. But the camera person now has to be very careful not to zoom in on persons anymore, because some persons not into it. Now, for those who would normally lead and are now saying that they're not comfortable with that, training may help. If we can provide opportunities for persons to go through it, talk to them about how you speak to a camera, how you speak into a camera, how you engage persons, what sort of colors you wear, what sort of colors you avoid, how you manage your mannerisms. If we go through all of that with persons, then you will find that some of them may be a little bit more comfortable to stand up there. And of course, there are others who will say, that is not for me, let me find something else to do. Somebody made the point about starting on time. I couldn't agree with you more. It is absolutely important that when we have our worship service, that we get in the habit. If we say we're going to, and I must commend Karen, we started exactly at 10 this morning, and that has to become the norm. And I'll share a story with Reverend Norbert when he was here.
I'm sorry, Marlene, just before you do, may I ask you just to lower your camera a little? We have lost the bottom half of your face.
So you have.
Yes, that's wonderful. Yes.
Okay. All righty, good. Yeah, a story about Reverend Norbert when he was our minister. We had this fancy government service and the Prime Minister was supposed to be here. And we are now like minutes away from the start time of the service and the Prime Minister has not arrived. So his assistant comes up, I was producing, comes up to me and says, you can't start, the Prime Minister is not here. So I tell her that, boy, we really have to start because it's 7 o'clock. And she just wouldn't take my word for it. So I say, okay, let me consult the minister. And we both go up to the minister and she very passionately tells him why we can't start without the Prime Minister. Our good Legensek looked at the lady, bowed very cordially and said, God is here, we will begin. I thought it was the most appropriate answer. And what was good about that, when the Prime Minister came, he apologized profusely and said that he's very happy that we started, because we have to remember who is our audience. We are gathered to worship. This is not just a political platform for whoever happened to be there. It is about worship. And if God is here, we will begin and we have to pay him the honor, saying, if we started at 7, we started at 7. So I wanted to make that comment. Somebody else who said that they're struggling now with 2 services. Boy, to live stream 2 service, really, really hard. I would say to you, if you must have 2 services, live stream only 1. And just have the other one for the persons within the sanctuary. And I would encourage you, given the amount of pressure that live streaming puts on your teams, if at all possible, try to have 1 service and then roster the people and tell the persons, so you have a registration process and say, if your congregation is broken up into cells or districts or whatever you call it, you can allocate numbers to the district, and then the elders can then say, okay, family X is first Sunday, family Y is second Sunday, and you just keep rotating it like that. And if one district not using up their numbers for whatever reason, that can be reallocated. But it is likely that COVID will be with us for another 18 months, maybe 24, some persons are saying. So to maintain that for 24 months, it's going to take a real toll on your team members. You may want to pull back from now. All right, let us continue. Now we're going to be looking at the production process. And when we're talking about the, hold on a little bit. When we're talking about the production process, we're talking about end to end. We're talking about planning, we're talking about leading, we're talking about all the technical components, and we're talking about evaluation at the end. So I would encourage you, and I know some persons get very antsy when we talk about evaluating a worship service because they think that that is something that is irreverent. We shouldn't do that. But the fact of the matter is that gives us an opportunity to learn and grow. And you don't have to make a big thing out of it. You can just informally or formally engage some members of the congregation and just hear from them how they experienced the service. It don't have to be any long thing. You can give them a couple of questions, where they connected most, what they didn't connect with, what recommendations they have for the future. Let us start by looking at members of the production team so you get an idea of just how large this team needs to be. Here, we're talking about the planners and the planning support team. And of course, I will make reference to how we are structured here. We have a small group of persons and they are called the planning support team. And their job is to get the draft plan from a variety of planners, discuss it with the planner, agree how we should proceed with this, and work with the planner to assign the various tasks. And we will talk about that in greater detail. So we have planners, and then we have a team of persons who support those planners. And this is all an attempt to make the work lighter, just bringing more persons on board. Of course, the larger your team, you have other sorts of admin problems, but especially in the season of COVID, we found that the planning support team has proven to be very, very useful. You have your liturgists. You have the person who manages your sound or the persons who manage your sound. You have the person who manages your visuals, your PowerPoint and your various slides and your videos that you may be putting up. You have the person who manages your cameras, your musicians, the persons who have responsibility for ensuring that the sanctuary is worship ready. You have your producers, and you have persons who are runners and stagehands. And this latter group, they're usually the youngsters who are in training to be producers in time themselves. In an ideal world, we would ask that persons work no more than once per month. But especially now, it's not an ideal world because when you are producing a worship service, when you're planning and producing a worship service, you have to start from long before to make sure that when you come Sunday morning, you're ready. So if you have these persons doing it week after week after week, it becomes a drain on their energy. Let's talk about the various steps involved now. So on a quarterly basis, and sometimes on a half-yearly basis when we're getting it right, a planning and leading schedule is developed. And this schedule includes the themes. They talk about who will plan the service, who will lead the service, who will do the time with the children, and it tells a person what the theme is for that month or that quarter and what the specific focus is for that Sunday. So in an ideal world, the planners have lots and lots of time in which to start planning the service or even to think about it and to think about the various elements that they want to incorporate. So if they want to include, for example, a ministry piece from the dancers or from one of the different choirs, they have enough time to say, this week we are focusing on stewardship and we would like you to minister focusing on that. And and they work it out. Then they come with their draft order every Monday. The Monday before the Sunday, the planner comes to the planning support team with a draft order. We go through the order together. We make suggestions, we make recommendations, and we assign roles and tasks. So, okay, so have the dancers been confirmed? Do the children know that they're going to be doing this? Does the person who's doing time with the children know that? And once we get all of those answers, we say, okay, all of this must be in place by Wednesday. And somebody on the team, it varies, starts creating the draft running order from that point. The order is finalized on Friday and printed on Friday. And so the producers now, and please remember that the producers are at the table when we're looking through the producer, at least one producer has to be sitting with the planners, the planning support team, at least one, sometimes two, depending on how complex the service is. And so the producers now have the final, you have the draft and you have the final thing, and you can begin to create the running order. We're going to look at the running order in detail in a moment or so. Depending on who the persons are, rehearsals may take place on a Friday evening. For example, the praise team normally meets on a Friday evening. We have a gospel choir, they will meet another time. We have a men's choir. So depending on who you're using, they will come in for their rehearsal. And of course, this has to be coordinated because the same set of musicians. So everybody have to make sure, so you can ask a musician to be coming here 3-4 times for the week. And then we have what we call a production meeting. I would be so happy to tell you that at this production meeting, we all sit around the table and we all talk about what everybody is going to be doing and we get it all sorted. That's the ideal. In actuality, the production meeting is supposed to start at 2 o'clock on a Saturday. Most persons can't always make it here at 2 o'clock on a Saturday, but the producers have to really try to be on spot because those are the persons who will be pulling it together. And so the producers, have a draft running order. The various persons come in and you speak with them. So you're saying, okay, to the camera person, this is what we're looking at. This is what we're going to be asking of you. Tell me if this can work, right? You say to the person who's going to be liturgist, we want you to include these lines in it. We want to make sure that you're doing X, Y, and Z. The persons who are doing the decor, we say, okay, this week our focus is stewardship. So whatever you're coming up with in this corner, and they already know this, because they're part of the planning team too. So we look at what they're doing and the camera person see what they're doing and see how they can begin to frame the picture. So we go through it one by one like that, speaking with everybody and getting the details down. At the end of the meeting, the producers have the wonderful task now of sitting together or sitting alone, depending if it's a relatively simple service, and just thinking it through, making sure that all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed, and then documenting all the various steps. The person who is on visual, it's very important that that person comes in at 2 o'clock because now what they have to do is make sure that they have all the elements that are required for projecting. So they must make sure that they have all the videos in place. They must make sure that they have all the graphics in place. They must make sure they have the words of all the songs. And let me just pause here for a minute to talk about the projecting the words of the songs. When we are seeking to engage an online community, if we cannot project the words of the songs, we are really making it more difficult for them. So I know that sometimes, depending on the technology that you're using, it is a little difficult, but I'd encourage you to try and find a way around it so that you can, as the persons are singing, you can always put up the words for the song. So on that Saturday evening, now we finalize and we circulate the running order, which means normally that we send it out by email, and in the email we may point specific persons to specific things. In particular, the camera person. If there's going to be a dance, you might say to the camera person, the dancers are going to enter from the south wing. They're going to move down the center aisle. They're going to exit left. So at least he has an idea of what the movements would be like. We say to the sound person, the dancers, the music will start before the dancers enter the sanctuary, or wait until the dancers are in position and then you start the music. They will pick it up from there. So we pick out all of those details, point it out for various persons. We may say to the liturgist, X and Y will be home for the period. Please make sure that you acknowledge them. Sister so-and-so has come out of the hospital. Please make sure that you welcome her back, and that kind of information. Sometimes we don't have the information during the week. We get it on the Sunday morning. And some of our liturgists are very, very good with communicating with us via WhatsApp, and that works best. And they can be on the platform and use the WhatsApp, and it's not obvious to everybody, depending on how they hold their phones and how they sit. If we absolutely cannot get through to them via WhatsApp, then we have to ask the camera person to move away for a little bit and give somebody a chance to just go up and say something to them or slip them a note. But we try to encourage the persons on the platform to communicate with us via WhatsApp. Another advantage of that is that the timing is so critical. So everything on the running order, as you'll see, is timed. So if one item is scheduled to take 3 minutes and it ends up taking 6, right away the producers have to start looking for an area in which we can cut 3 minutes if we didn't have any slack in the service. We try sometimes to just build slack in there for the unexpected, but if we don't have it, we have to find a way to cut it, and then we share that with the minister and or the liturgist who will act on it. So we go through all of that. You sit down and you visualize your service. You know, so you have everything in place. You know where your microphone is going to be. You know who's going to sanitize them. You know who's going to get it next. You know where the risers for the children who can't reach up to the microphone are, and who's going to move it so that when them go there, they can stand up on it. Right? You know when the camera person must move from X to Y. And as I say that, for live streaming, we have found that even for a normal Sunday morning, we need 2 producers. One producer who stays near the platform and manages the entrances and exits of various persons, responds to the needs of the persons on the platform. It may be as simple as somebody's perspiring no end, you get them some paper towels or whatever to just try and mop up some of that water, or get them some water, whatever that may be. And we need somebody down at the other end of the congregation, of the sanctuary now, in the room with the camera people, with the sound people, with the visual people, and managing anything else that may be happening down there. So again, it is a strain on, and all of this is because we try to minimize dead time on air, because what we used to be able to get away with in the sanctuary, it is much, much more challenging on the live stream. We encourage all team members to arrive 1 hour before the start of the service, especially if we had not nailed down all the pieces the night before, and that happens way too frequently. So the person who is doing the Time with the Children video may just have had a stressful work week and just wasn't able to complete it in time, so it has not been loaded. So that person may send it to us late at 12 o'clock at night. We have a faithful young man who has remote access, and he will load it at that time. We discourage persons bringing in things on a Sunday morning because that sometimes throws off everything. So we try as far as possible to get it done, even if it's 12 o'clock at night. But you get there early in the morning, 7 o'clock, and the producer's job now, the producers will get together, talk a little bit, and then just walk through the sanctuary and make sure that everything is in place, and we make adjustments as required. And some of the things we find that have happened to us in the past is that we get there at 7 o'clock and the full team is not there. 7:30, we don't see the visual person or the sound person, so we know we need to start moving to plan B. And plan B is probably looking in the congregation and see who are the technical persons sitting out in the congregation. It's a lot more difficult now under COVID when not everybody coming to church, and see if we can lay hands on somebody and say, X not showing up. Of course, you call them first. Can you just come in and help? Where that fails, the persons in the AV room have to reassign tasks, and one person will have to take on 2 functions. But by about 7:30 or by about just before the start of the service, by about 15 minutes out, between 7:30 and 7:45, we begin to make all the adjustments that are required. If it is a liturgist who has not shown, we have some go-to people, standard people who, you can always come to them at the last minute. Here's the thing, here are your words, go up and do what you have to do. I'll pause again for any questions or comments before we actually go into the running order. You'll also give me a chance to pull up my running order.
Marlene, well, there was a request from one participant for you to just show the previous slide, the one just before this one. If you could just bring that back.
There you go. And this presentation will be available to you now. I'll email it to Karen once I put on the contacts, and so you'll have the full presentation.
Okay. Do go ahead, and folks, if you need to capture it quickly, please use your phone. Yes, Marlene.
You have a copy of I read it. Karen, you're able to email out the order of service?
No, you wanted me to bring it up. Did you?
Oh, all right. No, I was actually hoping that they would have it as we went through the running order, that they would physically have it.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood you.
That happens. That happens. All right, bring it up for me, please.
Okay. There you go.
Can we enlarge it a little bit and move to pages 2 and 3?
You said pages 2 and 3?
Yeah, the center page. You have to play the pages with the actual order.
Okay. Okay.
So let us just look at this sample order of service. We'll run through it very quickly, and then we will look at what the running order looks like. So you see the song of preparation, the entrance of the color party, that was the Boys Brigade. Sunday, you see the opening hymn, scroll for me, Karen, and then we see the prayers that were delivered inside the sanctuary, the Lord's Prayer, expressions of welcome, the brigade hymn, the time with the children, which is a video. The readers, they were actually in the sanctuary that Sunday because they were celebrating Boys Brigade Month. They wanted to bring out as many of them as possible. Then the song, Reverend Stephen's preaching, and then the response, points of prayer. That is another element where somebody creates a PowerPoint of various points of prayer for the week. So for example, for this week, I'm sure we'll see prayer for the election process in the United States, prayer for the Latin America where the hurricane hit. And you just things of national and international significance that, that goes up there. And the points of prayer will be followed by the prayer of intercession, the presentation of elders. That's another video. That's not a normal part of our service. It's just that we're in the process of nominating elders now, the tithes and offering, and then the benediction. So it's a relatively straightforward service. And I just want you to keep those elements in mind as we go through in detail now the running order. Thanks, Karen. And I will bring up the running order. Is that font size large enough for you? Do you need me to go any larger?
Perhaps if you close the window on the left, the document recovery piece, if you close that, we'll have more of the screen.
Okay, and I'm trying to get to the bottom to close that, but it's not. Let's move this across. There we go. All right, and my computer has just gone into a circling mode. Let's give it a few minutes to catch up.
Oops.
What is that?
One more time.
How is that now?
If you click on the plus sign at the bottom to see if we can get it a little bigger, someone is asking for larger.
Will that work for you? We'll decide. I'm going to be scrolling down, you know, so you really need to see the section that is up now.
Yes,
a little bigger still?
No, I think let's go ahead. That's fine.
All right. So all of that stuff in red, and the running order is color coded for us. All of that stuff in red, the producer has to pay attention to it before the start of the service. So when you get in at 7 o'clock, or when you're getting 1 hour before, you check the platform. Make sure the platform set up and look crisp and the white clear, not around the corner, none of the cards not showing, the backdrop is smooth, all of the things that we have picked up over the past. And that's why it's so useful afterwards to look back at it and say, okay, now we missed that one. Let's make sure we get it right for the next service. And then you pull out your mics, and you know that you have to reserve. In this particular case, it was Reverend Stevens and one of our brigade leaders, Javier. So you make sure that nobody else gets the headsets. Those 2 persons are going to be talking a lot, and those mics are not as mobile as the cordless, so those have to stay there. You take out 3 mics. We only have 5 mics in all, right? And so under this COVID dispensation,
That's
we
all.
always, can you imagine? And it is challenging. We have a problem with the soundboard right now that is being fixed, but we have 5 cordless and 2 headsets, but the headsets are not as mobile. So we have to pay particular attention to that. And so whatever your resource limitation is, you have to plan with that in mind. And so when the producer is at the table, we have to keep reminding the planners that you have to plan in mind that we usually have 4 praise team singers and we only have 5 mics in all. And when the choir come to sing, or when the men's chorus come to sing, is not running. So we know that 3 this morning will go to the praise team members. We know that Reverend Harris is going to be doing something early, so he needs 1. And we know that Joan is going to be cantering some of the main songs, which is why we reduced the praise team to 3, so Joan can get 1 for herself. The offering basket, sometimes because of the online service, the person who is receiving the offering normally holds up a basket and, talk about making your offering, and so that basket has to be close at hand. You can't wait until just at the point where the person running around looking for the basket. So the producer has to make sure that the basket is close enough to that person and it is out of sight to everybody else, and then point out to the person, we have a standard place for it now. The songs, the praise team, on this particular evening, the praise team had not sent in the songs. They normally start singing sometime before the service begins, but the songs were not in the AV room up to the point when we were leaving. So when you come the next morning, now you have to make sure those songs are there. The call to worship will include a trumpeter, and we have decided that the trumpeter, where he's going to stand to play, and so he has to sit close enough, and we reserved a section for him. You check on your various team members, you check on your musicians, you confirm that the video is in place, the point of prayer is in place. Sometimes the point of prayer, we've been finding, especially recently, largely because people are tired, we don't get the points of prayer. So we don't want the liturgist to say, okay, now please turn your eyes to the screen. So it's a point of prayer not there at that point in time. We cut it off completely and we inform the liturgist not to call for it. This particular week, when we left the evening, there was some uncertainty as to who would lead a particular action song for the children. So we had left it for the morning, where we're there at 7 o'clock, and we need to talk to them now and say, okay, have you guys decided who will lead it? So we will know what to tell the person in the person operating the cameras. Because we have the color party coming in, and because there's a lot of protocol around the movement of the flags and the movement of the party, and even though we tell our elders before who are the Bible bearers, we need to remind them exactly how to exit and navigate the brigade color party. People know things, but people forget things, especially under pressure. So it is always good for the producer to have this little running order. And as the elder is going, you just very quickly say to the person, remember, as you go down, they will move left, you move right. That will make it smooth. You go find the brigade people, make sure that they're in place. You check on the sanitization team. Of course, now we're into the era of COVID. So as you enter the sanctuary, your temperature has to be tested. Your hands have to be sanitized, and we record your name and contact information just in case something happens. We'll be able to contact everybody who was in the sanctuary on the particular day that you came in. And we make sure that the offering bags are distributed and that the people taking up the offering know what they must do, and that the offering plates are in place. I didn't even write that down. Used to. All right. So that's what the producer does. That is a producer's checklist first thing in the morning. And your checklist may vary a little bit, but what I would encourage you to do is, as you're running it through in your mind, make sure that you have every single thing. This week, we didn't have anybody who was so short that we needed to put in the risers. But if we did, we would have included that at this point here. The prayer before, and then at 7:35, we start at 8. The praise team goes up and they start singing. Sometimes they make it at 7:35, sometimes they don't, but we are not live streaming yet. And not many persons are in the sanctuary anyway, so we don't hold hard and fast this 7:35. But we try to get them there and singing at least 10 minutes before. And that helps in that it allows the persons in the sanctuary to disconnect, to stop the chattering, to stop the movement, and to settle down and get ready for worship. So even as they're singing, they're encouraging persons to verbally to just disconnect and remember why we are here. We make sure that the color party is in the position, and by this time they must be completely in position and ready to enter. And then at 7:58 now, this is a song that leads us into the worship. And this is when we begin to live stream, because we go to the live stream just before the 8 o'clock time, so that we don't just sort of come on with a jerk. So as this song, as the praise team is singing that song at 7:58, the person in the sound room and the producer who is down there, just in case they don't remember, will say, time for the live stream to begin. They sing the song. No, so the things in red would be for the producers, they're the pre-activities. The things highlighted in yellow, these are for the producers during the service. The producers will make sure that these things are in place during the service. The things highlighted in green, that's for the persons in the AV room, whether it's for the camera, the sound person, or the person who is on visual, right? So you'll see live stream begins, that's in green, and the person who is managing the live stream that day. So when they look at it, they don't pay attention. Persons just look at their particular color once the service begins, because they found that sometimes people couldn't find what they were looking for quickly enough to respond in time. So you have instructions to the camera person not to pick up the Bible, the entry of the Bible, but instead to focus on the boys' brigade, who would be at the entrance looking very smart at this time, ready to march in. And then you have Reverend Harris now. So they produce at the front, produce at the back, talking to the boys, produce at the front, making sure that Reverend Harris is ready to go and begin to receive the flags. The boys come in, and then the camera person needs to know that the brigaders will exit north. And as they follow the brigaders out, he also needs to know, the person on the camera also needs to know where the trumpeter will be standing for the call to worship, because this has to be seamless. As they are leaving, when they're halfway down, the trumpeter will come to his position and he will begin to play. So we have the call to worship, and it starts with the trumpet sound, and the liturgist responds. And you see, this interchange worked very, very well with the trumpeter, and they captured each other's moods very, very well. And that is largely because they were both there on the Saturday evening, and they played around with it for a while until they got it in sync. And so at the end of the call to worship, now this call to worship, of course, is not really engaging anybody online. It's a very particular process for this Sunday. Then you see the section in blue, that's for the musicians. So yellow for the producers, green for the AV room, blue for the musicians, and of course, red producers should have that from before. So the cue to the musicians is that there should be no lapse between the let us sing and the oh praise ye the Lord. Okay. Instructions to the praise team. To minimize the movement, we tell the praise team when to come off and when to remain. And the praise team leader is a person who gets the running order. So that person is aware that after this song, they are supposed to remain in place, and the cantor will come up and go to things, so nobody moves, they just stay. And the camera is also aware that they're not supposed to be picking them up during the prayer. The camera person has two options. They focus on the person who is praying, or they go over to one of the rest areas that we had agreed on before. And it continues pretty much like that. I will give you a chance to just run down now. You will see the degree of details. Oops, sorry about that. Let's go down again. You will see the degree of details One thing I would point out at timestamp 8:11, and you notice that on the left-hand side, we have when the activity must start, and on the right-hand side, we have the duration. That allows the producer to make changes rapidly. In the event that somebody uses up more than them 3 minutes, and you notice that everything is going to be running later, you see, when can you crunch it in after that? The Lord's Prayer, ensure that all persons with mics join the prayer. What happens is that if the persons with mics do not speak directly into the mics at that point in time, there's going to be dead air online because the congregation is not mic'd. So the congregation is there happily in prayer, and the people at home is wondering, did I lose the feed? Okay. So we notice, you see that by 8:14 now, the cantor and the praise team, we tell them what side to exit. This is important because you don't want the bungling when everybody coming off one time and everybody coming on one time. So there are times when the praise team will be allowed to exit south, which is a preference. And there are times when they're asked to exit north, and there are times when they're asked to exit both north and south, to go north and to go south. And that is all dependent on what is going to happen next and where that person is coming from. Making sure that the videos are in place. When we come in the morning, previously we just go into the AV room and say, you have all the videos? And they would say, yeah, man, we have all the videos. We have learned that when we go into the AV room, we kind of sit down and we chit chat a little bit and you say, that's what I see your schedule. And you'll look through, because sometimes all the videos for them is not all the videos for you. So they may have 4 videos, but it's 5 videos supposed to be there. And if you go too hard with that, then person begins to say, like, you don't trust me. But it's not that. We recognize the challenges with communication. So as producer, you not only have to say you have all the videos, you may want to say, all right, let us run through the video schedule now. You have this one and that one and that one and that one and that one. And you have them in the right order. This one first and that one and that one and that one and that one. And then once you do that, it is more likely to run more smoothly. But we still have instances where you go through all of that and then the wrong video come up and you have to take it down and put up another video. Or we have to miss the video altogether because they don't have enough time to do it. Go to timestamp 8:18. Oh, before that, expressions of welcome. You notice that the liturgist is doing it, and he's standing by the center lectern. That is too, it's very, very important. We're operating with 2 lecterns. And moving them from one lectern to the other allows us to move the mics and clean them more easily. If they were all using the one lectern, that would create a challenge for us. So fortunately, the person with the headset is a person who normally goes to the center lectern. The person with the handheld mic or the person who has a mic in a stand goes to the wooden lectern. And then you go to timestamp 8:18 after the expression. So we are showing now the brigaders during the video. You have where the cantor is coming up to the wooden lectern. You have the pay team member supporting. You have quite a lot of things happening right there. So you have to specifically prepare the camera person. This sounds very obvious, but if the camera person is not alert as to what is going to happen, they can be caught off guard. So when they know that this is about to happen, they know from the beginning here now, the video is going to be going, they have to be positioned not to come back on the platform when this is happening, but they have to be positioned to come back somewhere else and then switch back to the platform afterwards. 8:23. So Reverend Harris introduces the time with the children, and by this time we have worked out who is going to be singing the song, and the person singing the song, Rev Harris pronounces the blessing on all our children. So sometimes time with the children is a video, sometimes it's a prayer over their lives, and sometimes it's an action song. It just varies from Sunday to Sunday. But now pay attention to 8:23, where the producer now has to take the mic. So they just finished singing. Producer has to quickly take the mic from the praise team member and give it to the second reader, because the first reader already had a mic earlier up, but we had to wait until now because you have 5 mics, so 4 deployed, 1 moving. First reader got the first one, the second reader gets the second one. And what we say to the readers is, okay, the first reader goes up, moving not so very briskly. The second reader goes right behind, moving as briskly as you can while you collect the mic from the producer. And then they both, one stands at the center lectern, one stands at the wooden lectern, and we ask them to read quick. So as one finish, the other one just pick up. And then we continue with the various mic movements. I think those are the key things that I wanted to bring to your attention. I can just scroll so you can see. So we have the song, and oh, this is one of those times where the praise team exits north and south, and that's largely because Reverend Stevens, the lecture that he's going to be preaching from, is in the center. So as he moves the center, they just scatter on either side from him. The producer has to be ready for any kind of switch, and this particular day, Reverend Stevens just pulled a switch on us. And it was a switch that made perfect sense in terms of the movement of the Holy Spirit. So the minute he requests that switch, the praise team has to find a way to signal the producer to let her know so that all the other things will happen. What he did at that point in time was he changed the song, and he wanted them to come in at a particular point in his sermon. To the congregation, it went seamlessly, and that's because the producer was alert and ready, and the praise team leader recognized that the producer had to know so that they could make the required adjustments to the order and alert the camera person in particular, because if the camera person is expecting to focus on one area for a while and then suddenly somebody else moves and starts doing something else, it throws them a little bit. I guess for persons who operate cameras for them living, it might not be so difficult, but for all guys who are really just volunteering and using them gifts to the Lord, we try to give them as much notice as we can. And then we have the response to the word, and you notice the instructions to the musician. That is done in the usual rhythm. Points of prayer, the music. Oh, one thing that we have found very, very helpful is that as we struggle to avoid dead time on air, whenever something goes down, we ask the musicians to be ready to either continue the song that just ended or pick up on the song that is about to begin. Because that is not so bad when you do that and you combine that with a camera person who has switched to a particular focal point. The collection of the tithes and offering. We normally have an offering video, but because of the amount of time this particular Sunday, we decided not to play the video, but instead just to have the information running as a crawler. And so those are some of the things. When you have a little bit more time, a little bit more elbow room, you can do that. But you notice we are at 9:03 and we're just about to collect the offering. So we realized that if we went and showed that video, which lasts about 2 minutes, it would have pushed us beyond our time target. And our time target is not to exceed 9:15. I think on this Sunday we did, but not by much. Not by much. We went over we didn't go as far as 9:20. Right? So that is the running order, and that's the level of detail. After you do it for a couple of times, it gets a little easier, but we have to guard against complacency, because we find that sometimes the producers become so familiar with it and you become so comfortable working with one particular person that we don't document some things. And then when somebody else comes on, they are at sea. So we try as far as it's possible to write it down, check it out afterwards, see what else we could have done and improve it for the next time. So,
we have just about 2 minutes left of the scheduled time. We want to engage some questions. So friends, I want to ask your permission if we could go an additional 10 minutes. We won't keep you longer than that in the webinar. Is that okay? May I ask you just to put the okay in the chat? You know, it's a Saturday and people have commitments and we want to be faithful. All right, I am seeing okays coming up. For those who are not able to stay beyond the time, please remember that we will make the presentation available, and also that you would be able to go back to the YouTube to YouTube, United Church YouTube channel, to pick it up. So we want to pick up a couple of questions. Marlene, are you able to engage them now?
Yes, I am.
All right. So I'm gonna bring a couple. One of them you may have answered. What if the service goes over the scheduled time? And then a very important comment that is being made, that you have shared the experience of Webster, which in the scheme of things is large congregation. The problem is smaller congregation. And what kind of tips and pointers would you give for planning and executing for the smaller? So the first question relates to what happens when you go over the scheduled time.
In terms of the persons in the sanctuary, nothing happens. They just continue until the service ends. In terms of the persons on the live stream, nothing much happens either. We try not to go beyond the 15 minutes. And so we find that most persons remain. We do find, however, that on live stream, by the time we get to the dedication of the offering, you can see people beginning to leave. And that's because, it could be a time issue. It could be that they just figure that they don't want to be part of the last part of the service. Now, the question about the large and the small congregations, I take your point completely. What I would encourage you to do for the smaller congregations is, as I said earlier, limit the amount of services you live stream. Try to live stream only one. And as a matter of fact, if you can get away with not live streaming, but with streaming, that's one recommendation that I would make. Certainly, if you're doing Bible study and prayer meeting and worship service, and you have a limited pool of resources, you may want to look very, very carefully at seeing, am I in a position right now? Is my congregation in a position right now to be consistently live streaming? Or should I, for example, be having the ministers, I know Reverend Lembe does, record messages and send them out to the congregants and to the wider United Church also, because I have been getting his from time to time. Or should I record it and then stream it afterwards using the live chat feature, which takes a lot of pressure off, and it does allow you to connect with your congregation nonetheless. In terms of the running order, I would strongly suggest, though, that you make it as detailed as your context requires. Right? You may not have multiple cameras. You may not even have multiple microphones. That's okay. Just make sure that whatever your resources are, and imagine, we are struggling really hard with the five mics. Just make sure that when you are planning within the context of what is available. And when you're doing the running order, you are tracking that very, very carefully.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other coming up, but I have a couple that I would love to put in the mix. Two of them, you talked about the planning team and the planning support team. And the question is, where is the minister in all of this? That's one question. And the second question is, what do you say to the person that says that all of this detail that you are presenting here is suggesting that you're planning out the Holy Spirit out of the service?
All right. First question, the minister is part of the planning support team. So he meets on a Monday evening, and he's also there for the production meeting. So all of this is happening under the guidance of the minister. When he is not available for, other competing activities, then somebody else fills that slot. But he does get, and that's why the order is
somebody else from the pastoral team?
Not necessarily. It could be somebody else from the worship planning team.
Okay.
Not necessarily somebody else from the pastoral team. But what happens is that on the Friday, that's why we don't sign off onto the Friday, because that's when the pastoral team has a chance to go through in great detail everything. And at that point, things can be changed. So the draft order comes in, the pastoral team now has a chance on Friday morning to go through, ask any questions, and request adjustments. Now, for the persons who say that we're leaving out the Holy Spirit, I'd say, actually, when we do the timing, we try as far as possible to leave some slack time. And remember, I said to you, know, Reverend Stevens just made a change on us, and we just worked with it because the change that he made was clearly in line with the leading of the Spirit. So we are always prepared to change things as the Spirit intervenes. Now, once that change is made, the producers have the task of looking at the rest of the schedule and seeing, okay, now, do we just allow this to run over time? Did we have enough slack time in it to accommodate this? Or do we crunch in some activities towards the end? And so those are the options.
Okay, well, one of the participants is joining you and is noting that God is a God of order. So in a real sense, planning does not in itself rule out the movement of the Holy Spirit. I stand with you, Sharon. I wanted to point out too, that is my firm belief. The Lord knows the end and the beginning and before the beginning and all of that. And when we sit down to prepare a month before, the Holy Spirit is with us and He knows who is coming, who is tuning in. He knows. So He guides the planning process to the extent that we yield to Him. And then on the day, it is our responsibility to do our best to execute what we have planned. I think that is important teaching that our church needs to understand. The Holy Spirit does not act only in the moment. God will do when He does.
And I like that.
Sorry.
I like that, and I like that, and I just underscore that he acts in the moment also, and we have to be ready when he does to respond appropriately. But it cannot be that everybody in the congregation go and decide that, you know, there's a leading of the Spirit and I want to do this and I want to do this. We follow a particular line. So if somebody feels a burning need to speak, the first gatekeeper is the producer. And the producer may say, let's do that another way. Or the producer may refer to the minister. And the minister may say, yes, allow the person to speak. Or no, let's encourage the person to do X, Y, and Z. But, you know, it's not that anybody can just go up and start doing whatever.
Not seeing any other questions, we'll share another thought that Sister Marlene, I have found that the process of producing or coordinating services is one that requires an acknowledgement of different gifts. And the fact that all gifts need to contend in the business of God's work. Absolutely. So in our conversations, we need to be willing to acknowledge that the person who is a musician has an understanding in a particular area. The person who is the logistics person has an understanding, and we need to be able to sit down to talk so that we can agree and no one is trying to, you know, be up and above the other one. We are reasoning together and working this through. The other thing is that it may look very complex, but sometimes the matter of producing is as simple as if you're having Advent candle lighting, you need to make sure that somebody bring in the candle and that the candle has been taken out of the office and brought into the church, and that after putting the candle in place, the matches is there or the igniter. These are some of the things that we need to think about. They may seem simple, but when you're in the moment and it's not in place, it's crosses.
I would also add to that, Karen, and you have the igniter there, but we would say to the producer, keep a box of matches in your pockets.
Yes.
Just in case. Now we have had situations where the lovely igniter won't work and the box of matches in the pocket have to come out.
Okay. All right, folks, I am not seeing any other questions. I think it is important for us to ensure that the presentation is available to those who would desire it. And I'm going to ask you now if you would be so kind as to participating in a poll that I have now launched. It is on screen. If you could just take a few minutes, please, to give us your feedback. It will help us in assessing what we have done and also in continuing to provide you with what you need. I'll just leave it for another minute. Another 30 seconds, folks, and then we'll bring that polling to a close. This is the season of polling, eh? This one doesn't take so long to count, though. Very easy to gather up the outcome. We have a thank you from a participant to you, Marlene, and the organizers, hoping other segments will appear in short order. One of our participants has shared in that Mr. Biden has won. Oh my goodness.
Thank you so much for your kind words.
I've seen.
So now the problems begin. Now that Biden has won.
Yeah.
Or should I say the problems escalate?
All right, I am going to end the polling at this point. Please feel free to share any other feedback that you may have with me. My email is available to you. Friends, please join me. Some have already started in saying such a big thank you to Marlene for sharing her experience of producing worship services. And as she has said to you, she has shared out of her experience, and the experience is located in a particular place. And we have to do some adaptation, but some of you have expressed ways in which you need some further help, and we will do our best to accommodate. A big thank you to Reverend Craig Dillion Dietrich, who has been hard at work in the background, just making sure all the technical things are in place and keeping me on my toes. Thank you to all of you. I know Saturday morning is not an easy time. When it comes to weekend, you have things to do, and you have carved out this time because you're interested and you have a need. It really has been my pleasure on behalf of the United Church to bring these learning opportunities, and we will continue to seek ways to work with you. God bless Uno. Be safe. Walk good. Take care.